This is Jason Anderson, and we are returning from recess. At this point, we'll move on to the Board of Ed and the Superintendent's presentation of the Board of Ed's budget. Would you take over?
Good morning, and thank you very much. So I am Bob Angeli, Superintendent for the Killingley Public Schools. With me this morning is Chairwoman of the Board, Janice Jolly. Two other board members currently seated, Chris Vians and Susan Lannon, and I believe Lydia Rivera Abrams is also with us this morning. And behind me, well, there's only one person there right now. Oh, there we go. So we have Sue Nash Ditzel, who is our Assistant Superintendent, and Christine Clark, who is our Manager of Business Affairs. So this morning I have a brief PowerPoint presentation. You have already received copies of the Board of Education approved budget. And then also at your seats, I put another document there that is the Killingley Public Schools audited budget surplus history, and we'll talk a little bit about that after the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, and then as the presentation goes on, if you have urgent questions, feel free to interrupt and ask questions. If you prefer to wait to the end to ask the questions that you may have, then that is fine as well. Okay? All right. So please go to the next slide. Oh. Thank you. So the first slide is just a listing of the budget development process. So for the Board of Education, this process really begins early in the fall. We begin having our conversations with the administrative team as early as September, but we get the budget documents out to them in October, and during the months of October and November, our building level administrators and our district department level administrators are working with their staff to put together their budget requests for the upcoming year. The Manager of Business Affairs and I then meet with each of the building level principals and the department, the district level department folks regarding their budget requests. We review what they're asking for, as well as any budget decision packages that come forward for new positions or other major purchases. I submit a preliminary budget to the Board of Education at the end of January, and then the Board of Education meets as a committee of the whole through the month of February and into the beginning of March to review each of the sections of the budget, as well as all the decision packages. I bring the superintendent's recommendation to the board at its meeting in March. The board then acts upon it, approves a budget, and that is what we transmit over here to the town hall, to you guys, by March 15th. And then today in yellow, we are here doing our presentation to the town council, and then we look forward to hearing your thoughts, and then the public hearing, the annual town meeting, and the budget referendum a little bit later this spring. Next slide, please. So the budget is built with a few guiding documents in mind. We take into account the Board of Education goals so that we know that we are budgeting to support the goals that the board has set for the district. So there is an academic goal that has two parts. create proficiency-based learning system, ensuring equitable achievement opportunities for all students, and then to bring to life the KPS portrait of the graduate with students, staff, families, community, ensuring all students are prepared for life success. We have a talent development goal, so the KPS will retain highly effective professionals who are collaborative, respectful, supportive, reflective, critical thinkers with an ability to connect with our student body. Next slide, please. We have an organizational goal that has two parts. We want to update and maintain facilities that are safe, healthy, and adaptable learning environment conducive to our student-centered teaching and 21st century skills that we want for our students. We ensure pre-K through 12 students have access to progressive digital learning tools and the skill to utilize them, preparing them for future success. That particular part of this goal came in very handy during the pandemic when the district had to switch over to remote learning and occasionally have to adopt that periodically throughout the pandemic. School and culture and climate is the fourth goal area, and there are two parts there. Killingly Public Schools provide a safe, healthy, and supportive environment for learning where students build resilience through the integration of social, emotional, and academic skills. And then the Killingly Public Schools will cultivate positive student-family community partnerships that support learning, build pride, and recognize the value for education. And so those are the board's goals, and they have been in place now for a few years. Next slide, please. So you heard about the profile of the graduate as part of one of the board's goals, and so I included that in the presentation this year. It was not included last year, but it's good to remind everybody about what it is. So the profile of the graduate is a document that identifies skills and dispositions that we want for our students so that they can lead productive and adult lives and be able to achieve their goals that they have set for themselves as adults, both academically, socially, emotionally, as well as career attainment. There are 5 major areas, and I won't read the whole document, but we would like our students, when they leave us, to be continually pursuers of knowledge, effective communicators, fluent with technology, critical thinkers, and take personal responsibility. Next slide, please. So this slide is budget history over the last several years as well. The last column is what the current ask is for next year. So you can see dating back to the 15-16 fiscal year, the trends over time. We are the superintendent, I proposed a budget to the board of a 1.94%. The Board of Ed approved a budget at its meeting of 1.37%. And of course, the final budget we won't know until referendum. But you'll see that the ask of the board, of all the years there is only there isn't any that are low. Well, there is one that is lower. So it's the second lowest of all those years. And again, on this slide here, you'll see that my original proposal, 1.94%, would have been an $873,612 increase over the current year expenditures. The board reduced that by a little over $258,000 or 0.58% increase. So we have now an increase of $615,200 over current year expenditures. That's a 1.37% increase, and the dollar amount would be $45,644,997. Next slide, please. So this slide breaks up the budget into the major budget categories. So salaries, you'll see, are a 1.01% increase. These are primarily contracted pay that we pay for our employees to work in the school system. You'll also see the 200 is the benefits. So the benefits are would be going up by 0.14%. So salary and benefits 1.25%, right? And the total budget increase is 1.37. So most of the increase is attributed to salaries and benefits. These are contractual obligations that we have with district staff. Yes.
You can go first.
So the 1.1%, is that after a normal contractual 2% agreement, or is that just 1%, like part of the agreement? Like, is that on top of their normal contractual agreement?
So the 1.01% is the overall impact to the budget based upon contract settlements that we currently have, and then some estimates. Also, when we have vacancies, we use a placeholder. We don't know at what level of years of experience or degree status that we'll be hiring new employees. And so we calculate a placeholder based upon previous year's hiring practices. And so sometimes new employees will come in at more than that amount, and sometimes they come in at less than that amount.
So it's like an average almost. The impact is an average.
It is. It's
getting 2% or something.
It's not quite an average. It's more estimated on where we'll be for next year. So we budget for all the current staff to continue into the next year, and then when we have vacancies, we try to take into account where those hires might come in on the various pay scales.
You had stated that the percent increase between salaries and benefits would be 1.25. Based off what I'm seeing, wouldn't that be 1.15?
It is. Thank you for that. 1.15%. Thank you. All right, next, purchase services. So these are lines 300, 400, 500. These are when we contract out for various services. It could be legal fees. It could be professional development. Also in there are leases for computer systems. Some of the computers that we purchase through the district, we purchase via leases. To try to maintain a common number annually in our budget so that we don't see large fluctuations up or down in the cost of computer devices. So you'll see there that the increase from current year to next year is $291,768. That's a 0.65% increase to the overall budget. For the supply line, and again, that's supplies across the districts, that is instructional supplies as well as non-instructional supplies. There is a decrease in that line item from the current year of $192,222. That's an overall decrease of 0.43% to the budget. We have a decrease also in the property line of $15,439 from current year to the proposed budget for next year. That is a 0.03% increase. The other line is relatively small line item in the budget. There's a minor increase of $7,849 to that. That's a 0.02% increase. Decision packages, again, are those things that would be new positions or other bigger expenditures. One decision package has been approved by the board, and that is a golf coach position at the high school for girls golf team. That's $4,412. That's a 0.01% increase to the budget. So between the line items that go up and the line items that go down, the overall increase, $615,000. Oh, and that should be a comma, not a period. $200, 1.37%.
I just got one question. On line 600 supplies, seeing that decrease of 192,000, based off what we're seeing on inflation and the cost of everything going up, where is that difference coming from?
All right, so that's a great question. Mr. Wood sent me an email. He asked about inflation impacts as well. So because we started building this budget in the fall, we are using some older numbers, right? We have not increased the budget to keep up with the rate of inflation. And the rate of inflation, as you know, has been going up astronomically. Some of the purchases that we will have to make, we are locked into prices. Like, we are partners with the town on fuel costs. We're partners with the town on insurance, although we're still waiting on insurance costs. And then other purchases are contracts that the Board of Ed has with various vendors for certain things. And so some prices will be relatively stable, but if there are new things that come up, those are the things that will hit us the most in terms of inflation, right? If we have unexpected repairs or maintenance that we have to do, we have been finding that the cost for parts, the cost for labor, the cost for shipping, all of these things have been going up.
But you didn't address the rationale behind the $192,000 decrease in supplies.
So the decrease comes in because the board has some unexpended funds this year in certain line items, in particular salary and benefits, because maintaining staff this school year has been extremely difficult to fill vacancies. And we have seen a lot of, during the school year, movement of a variety of staff, in particular paraeducators and teachers, but we have seen it in other positions as well. And it has been very difficult to sometimes maintain hires. Right, so the current school year, our substitute line is going to be over because we've been using substitutes a lot more often than we've had to because we haven't been able to fill vacancies. But that is more than offset by unexpended funds in the salary and the benefits line. So the pandemic is still having negative impacts on the district. In previous years of the pandemic, the impact has been that we haven't been able to provide all the types of programming that we normally like to provide. We weren't going on field trips. There were no interscholastic athletics for part of the pandemic. And then when interscholastic sports came back, it was at a reduced schedule, et cetera. And so we weren't expending funds in other line items. But this year, it really has been a staffing issue. There was staffing issues in the other years too, but this year it's primarily a staffing issue.
So, excuse me, just for clarification, correct me if I'm wrong. So you're saying it isn't the Board of Ed is purchasing less supplies. It's a matter of they're using unexpended funds to cover supply costs, because the last thing I would hate to see is teachers and staff not have the supplies they need and have
Yeah.
to purchase things out of their own pocket.
We will definitely have the supplies. We're going to use unexpended funds. Those are funds that the community has awarded to the district to run the educational program. We have not needed it for salaries because we haven't been able to hire, and so we will use some of those unexpended funds to make purchases this year to put things in place sooner rather than later. It's the same thing with the property line. So the property line really is equipment, either educational equipment, non-educational equipment, and it could also be vehicles. We are short a van in our maintenance department because there was a van that our inter-office mail carrier drove. That van died. And so we had to use another van that we had in the district for operations and maintenance for this other function, and we will purchase a new van for operations and maintenance. And so that's why you see the decrease there. But we're also going to go out and buy all the equipment that our nurses have asked for their nurses' offices, and we will get other equipment, classroom furniture, et cetera, in advance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Bob, can I, Mr. Angeli,
You could call me Bob.
but I'm trying, I'm being polite.
I'm in a tie, but I'm casual.
Me too, all the time. Okay, so we're to understand the budgeting, you said early September, everyone starts looking at this forecasting, putting the budget together. So we're at a 7% inflation rate, 7% increased inflation rate over last year. So this, which didn't just happen in February or March, it's been creeping up. So what are we doing to forecast as this inflation increases? So to understand you, we didn't take that into account, the rising prices of everything across the board right now. I know you're locked into fuel and other things, but there's no forecasted increase in this budget to compensate for the increased inflation rates. I'm not understanding that, because if that's not reflected in here, how are we going to accommodate that when things are too expensive in the next 6 months and it doesn't fit the numbers that you've put in here?
Right. So part of the advantage of using the unexpended funds at this point is that we could perhaps get ahead of inflation a little bit, assuming inflation is going to continue to rise. So that would be one of the advantages. The costs of the items themselves, the types of stuff that we're going to be buying, pens, paper, and some other types of instructional supplies, inflation hasn't hit some of those as much as other products. However, there is a concern about shipping costs because
Right.
they're being shipped
And you had
in,
mentioned you have to buy a vehicle,
and we do have to buy a vehicle.
and they're very expensive right now.
So we did.
So how do we look into that?
So we did build in some costs into some of the things that we put into the budget, but because we peeled the vehicle, almost all of the equipment, and some of the supplies out of the budget, those items then are, like for instance, we budgeted, I believe it was like $60,000 for a van. So we took that out. And so when we go out to bid, we think that van could come in under at this point. Had we waited to make the purchase, if we had left it in the budget, we were concerned $60,000 wasn't going to make it. We're seeing that now with purchasing buses for the transportation department. And so the town budgets for the purchase of buses, and the cost of buses has gone up. And so we had a meeting with our transportation director, and he explained the cost of various buses. And so we have been in the practice more recently of buying the types of buses that have the engine in the rear. They're flat nose buses. But we may have to purchase a more traditional kind of bus with the engine out front and, like a nose on the bus and not the flat nose bus, because those are a bit less expensive. Okay? You're welcome.
Hey, question, Bob. So to kind of go further with Jason's question, so basically, the reason that you're having reductions is because you're anticipating salaries and benefits to be less, so you're gonna have unexpended funds in
This year.
those locations, so that's gonna, in turn, help out your supply.
That is
Budget.
that is correct.
Okay. Because it is in a, if you could dumb it up for me, I'd appreciate it. Mary did a little while ago. So why would we want to do that? Why wouldn't we want to have the numbers, the actual numbers, instead of anticipating pulling money out of a line item and borrowing it for another line item?
So those right now are the actual numbers. So when I presented my budget to the board, I had explained to them that one of the ways that I got down to the 1.94% was that I would use unexpended funds to make certain purchases now, right? And so the board agreed with that, and so those things that were once in the budget are now no longer there. So if we don't go out and buy them now, they don't happen.
So that was like last year's funds, apparently.
The current year's funds, current year's unexpended funds,
To offset the next following budget.
that is correct.
Gotcha.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'm kind of going along with the locked-in stuff. Now, I know you have a food contract that manages the cafeterias, and when I was in school, we actually paid for our own kitchen staff. It wasn't like, because you have a contract, correct?
We do. We're currently going out to bid.
Okay, so because food costs have gone up just like everything else. I mean, if you go out to eat, either you have signs posted as you go into your favorite restaurant, prices are reflected because of increased foods. Have you made accommodations for that somewheres and you're expected for negotiations?
So, yes, we do that. And I don't want to give the town council a feeling like we don't understand that even in normal times, there isn't some level of increase in the cost of things that we purchase, right? And so we do understand that, and we do, when we build a budget, we do take that into account because we get information from the vendors that we work with. But back in October, I don't know that anybody thought we'd have over 6% inflation at the time, right? And so we used the numbers that we had at the time, and we build in a little bit of a cost estimate. But to be honest with you, I don't think, and we all knew that there was going to be the level of inflation that we're currently experiencing, right? And so as we move forward with new contracts, so we're going out to bid with the food service, and we will, as we have to go out to bid for other things, we will get the most current numbers at that time. And that was one of the reasons why when we transmitted the capital improvement plan earlier and it's included in the budget book. We have a lot of estimated numbers in there because the quotes that we get for building projects sometimes are only good for a couple of weeks, right? It used to be, hey, this is good for the next 2 months, right? You could lock in a price, but now some of the vendors, they're telling you that the prices are good for just a couple of weeks. Somebody else said that they spoke with a vendor that was only given 1 week, right? And so things go up quickly. And so I know it was a little discouraging for some of my board members that we had little asterisks in there saying it's an estimate, but that's really the best we could do in this climate.
So that's my overall question. It's nice to see a low budget number, but the unexpended funds originally, that was set up for special education, unexpected education needs for special ed, correct? And then facilities maintenance, like say if, I don't know, a furnace blew up or something. So what do we have in that right now?
All right, so I think we're
Available to use.
talking about two different things, right? So right
Yeah,
now,
okay, that's what I want to
yeah,
understand.
right now what I'm talking about are unexpended funds in
Okay.
the current fiscal year.
Okay,
Once we are done with this fiscal year,
and how much money is that available? That's what I'm asking.
right now,
What do you have available? What do you estimate?
so the last estimate that we had, and because that is provided with the quarterly reports,
Okay,
and so
yep.
we don't have the next quarterly estimate, but we were estimated a little over $2 million.
Okay.
Okay.
I just don't want to see you go over budget because we didn't account for the inflation, the increasing prices. Like you're saying, vendors won't even give you a quote past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So we just don't want to run into a problem where mid-year you guys need money for something and the funds aren't there. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I do appreciate that concern. The other funding source that you were also alluding to is the non-lapsing account, right? And so the non-lapsing account is once the school year is over, the fiscal year is over, there will be what are commonly referred to as surplus funds, right? But they are unexpended funds at the end of the year, right? So there's a state law that allows for boards of ed to request that up to 2% of their previous year's budget, if that is in surplus, be allocated or deposited into a non-lapsing account. And so Killingly has a non-lapsing account. We currently have a cap on it of $2 million. We are very close to the cap, but we're not over that cap. And so it is very possible that at the conclusion of this year, the board will direct me to ask the town council to put some of that money back into, put it into the non-lapsing account and max out that account. Right? That's a possibility. I can't speak for the board, but we'll see where we end in the year and what the board would like to do. Okay? And those funds, too, by the way, last year, both Mary Colorio and I kind of parallel investigated the non-lapsing account, and then we spoke to each other a few times to get it sorted out. There is a oral history that that account is to be used for overage of special education, because sometimes school districts can go over in special ed based upon unanticipated costs to educate students with special needs. And the other part is for capital projects, right, for the board. And the board has used the money on capital projects in the past, and I believe it has also used it for some special ed overages. So that's the oral history. But the the ordinance and the motion that put the non-lapsing account into place does not have those restrictions. And the state law allows a Board of Education to use those monies for any educational costs, right? And so the caveat would be the board starts spending it on things that the town council feels is an inappropriate expenditure, and then we ask for money to go into that account, and the town council says no, right? Or the town council amends the process somehow and puts restrictions on the use of the funds. But right now in Killingly, I don't think that there has been any abuse of that account, and I don't anticipate one in the future.
Got one more.
Yeah.
So, I agree with you with the escalation. It's just outrageous. Nobody wants to hold their prices. But I think what would help, and not to reinvent the wheel, but to me, and I completely don't understand, so forgive my ignorance, but to me, 2021 budget should be a separate project. 2022 to 2023 should be a separate project, speaking construction-wise, sorry. And I think what gets convoluted is the unexpended money isn't very clear on this, like you were saying, to compensate for different line items. That's like me taking a foundation and taking $250,000 out of the foundation to put it into the, you know what I mean, and put it into the siding fund or the roofing fund or whatever. So it's kind of convoluted. It would be better, I think, well-served if we actually knew the bottom line number and what number is going to be compensated from what line item to compensate that line item. I think that would probably answer a lot of questions. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I don't know if it would answer your questions.
Well, if you have
I think the
unexpended
analogy
funds-
between a construction project and budgeting for the operating budget of the school system is not quite a perfect fit, but I do understand the premise of what you're saying.
Right, because when you say unexpended funds, you don't know exactly, budgetary-wise, you don't know where the funds are coming from. So that's kind of not a real true number, the 192,000 that you're reducing. That 192,000 is coming from somewhere else. So there should be
It's coming from salaries and benefits,
right.
right? Because that's where we have the biggest amount of unexpended funds.
Right,
So,
but that would be a decrease in your salaries and benefits, which shouldn't affect your supplies, right? So in other words, if this came over here and you said we took the $192,000, it just doesn't say that we're gonna spend $192,000, right? It should say we're gonna spend the same amount of money, but we're gonna take $192,000 because there could or possibly be an increase to offset that line item. Does that make sense?
it does, but that is what I said, right? I said that we are gonna
Right. But I
we're
mean,
gonna
if
have.
we get this piece of paper, and I know it's a generalized piece of paper.
Yes,
But it just maybe a little asterisk down there would say, hey, okay, so we pulled this, and this is a deduction from that. I understand you explain that, but I'm just saying, we have a lot of questions about, escalation and, taking account. You are taking account into that, but it would help to know that this would be an increase into that funding line item.
One thing I was gonna bring up that may help with, I think, where Andy's going, is when you look at the town governmental budget that's presented to us, it has what the current fiscal year's approved budget was and where we fall, showing, okay, we anticipate we're going to spend all of this, or we anticipate there's going to be a surplus in these line items. If this summary had something similar to that, where it showed the 21-22 budget, and then between that line and then that column and the next column where it had 22 to 23 BOE budget, if it had actual projection as far as where you expect to be, showing, okay, well, we expect to see a surplus in salaries, we expect to see a surplus in benefits, then it may help questions like that to, okay, well, where's this other money coming from that we're purchasing supplies with? Where's that coming from? What line item or category is there currently a projected surplus in that we're going to use that towards pre-purchasing items or offsetting other parts of the proposed budget? And that may be something that, I know we had one meeting as far as what the town council would like to see in the budget document. That may be something we can talk about then, because I know we're planning on doing that as well later on this year, to where just the budget document might make it a little bit easier, especially for people at home who are looking at this, who may be watching the presentation online, to where they can understand a little more easily, rather than having to, and that was why I brought up the question of the decrease in supplies, was just to get some clarification, especially for people who are at home or newer council members who are newer to this process.
Okay, that's fair enough. The budget documents that we share after each of the board meetings where we discuss the budget, those documents do show this information, and then when you get the quarterly reports from us, that is also there. So we have been sharing that information with you all along throughout the year. There are some budget documents within the budget book that could provide us with some more clarity as well. Okay? All right.
You could have took salaries and decreased your salary budget, right? You have a 1.01 over the overall budget, but you could have taken that money and put it into, you know what I mean, used it into the actual category, the line item, that would have decreased that budget, right?
Yeah, so, but what this slide shows is what was budgeted for the current year for salaries, right? Certified and non-certified salaries. That's what's in the budget. And had we had a normal year, right, we would have expended that line, those salary line items to as close to the max as possible, right? There's always fluctuations in staff. People come and go. There's always fluctuations in the benefits. A single gets married, now their benefits package is different, et cetera, right? But I wouldn't show a decrease on this slide because this is what was budgeted for the current year. And what we're asking for next year is an increase in salaries because the contracts for our employees have provided raises for them.
Right.
And so there's an increase from the current year salary line, even though we're not going to expend it fully. If we return back to normal and we have some stabilization in the workforce, then what we're saying we will need is $27,574,182 in certified and non-certified salaries. That's an increase of $454,832 over what it is currently. So that's a little over 1% increase. So this slide, I need to show that.
I understand you need to show that. I'm just saying to, like Jason has said, for anybody else in the public or whatnot, I think it would have just been, my opinion, don't get me wrong, it would have been better to see, okay, we had, because of we have a decrease in this budget of $192,000. It just seems like it would be the same line item, that's all. You know what I mean? You would rather see that, okay, so we're gonna have a $452,000 increase this year, right? I would imagine people would like to see, well, we're only gonna increase it $200,000 only because last year we didn't utilize those funds.
But that's not the way that line item will work. we will increase it by $454,832, right?
Right.
We didn't expend all the salary line, but that doesn't mean we're carrying over the amount that was not expended so that we could decrease the increase for salaries, right? So let's say we were going to have $200,000 left over, and I'm telling you we need $454,832. I don't decrease that down to $254,832, right? Because I can't carry over the money from one year to the next. So now it is going.
So you can't carry over salary money, is what you
I
said?
can't carry over any money. I cannot carry over any money at all.
Okay.
So the Board of Ed last year, for the current year, received $45,029,797, right? None of which we can carry over. However, if there are line items that we are not going to fully expend, that money can be used in other areas of the budget to make purchases. I believe the town could do that as well. The process is sometimes a little bit different on the town side versus the board side, but if the town had unexpended monies in a salary line item, as we are experiencing, and you knew that, you could use that money somewhere else in the budget. You just have to go through the proper procedure to do that. And so that is what the board is trying to do.
That makes sense. So you
Okay.
can't take salary money and use it for deduction as salary money. That deduction in that unexpended funds would be able to use for materials and such.
That's what I'm doing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think,
We got there eventually.
I think what we're getting hung up on is, this is the 40,000-foot view of everything, whereas this budget book here is you're on the ground looking at the details now. That's where I think we're all getting hung up on. But I do kind of agree with the chairman's comment on that. Is just a couple more additional columns here to kind of show your 2021, 2022 budget, what's expended. Here's what we project. Kind of that historical look there. Obviously, I know in my email to you, you definitely, you and the fiscal subcommittee of the Board of Ed have heard out our concerns as well, and we're still working on the finer details. So I think that that's part of those finer details that we'll continue to work on.
Perfect.
But yeah,
So are we going through this book, or are we just?
Yeah, we could.
Okay. And
Once
if
we're
we-
done with this, then we'll,
And I was gonna say, like, looking through this book, if we don't go through it, is there an opportunity for people to, like, I met with Mary and Jen for a couple hours, and they explained all of it to me. Is there any opportunity with you or Ms. Clark to go through the book? Like, we don't have to go through the whole book unless people want to go through the
well,
whole book.
we weren't going to go through it page by page like Ms. Colorio does
Yeah.
for the town budget.
Yeah. 'Cause
Right.
There's
But if,
definitely things in here
but if
that
there
I
are
would
things that you have
about.
questions about, then today would be a day to ask some
Okay,
questions.
so there is no opportunity, like, oh, we're gonna have a public training for the, Board of Ed or the town council to go through the line by line. Do you guys ever do that?
Well, not for the
I-
town
Ms. Clark-
council,
Ms.
because the
Clark-
town council does
Ms.
not
So
have.
no, I said no.
Right. The town council doesn't have line item control of the board's budget.
No,
Right.
absolutely, but it'd
Oh.
be good to understand what's happening, and that's what he's saying. So Mary will say, we can, in the revenue, we see this coming in from the sewer department, and then it's reflected in the expenditures, that here it is going out, like, it's very clear, and this isn't necessarily that clear to us. I think that's what people are saying. But anyways, if we're going into the book, if I have questions at this time, I'll ask.
Yes.
Um,
And then if there are lingering questions, you just
Yep.
have to let us know.
Yeah, because the more information you have, then you look and you go, okay, that's cool. Otherwise, you're going, what's going on? So I think it would make your situation easier, not harder, honestly. You know what I mean? Like, for people to really be able to understand what was happening.
Okay.
Thank you. Are we in the book now?
No, we're not even through the PowerPoint yet.
well, we,
That's okay.
what we keep hearing is everybody wants to see where every single dollar went. That's all we're trying to get to. Everyone needs to understand like where every dollar goes. Like Mary's has an estimate, an actual, and approved. So we can see where we started on the budget last year, like over the past 5 years. We can see what the actual number came in at, what the estimate is right now going forward, and then what the budget approved. So we're looking at a real-time number of where we started and where we ended up. So I think that's where the Board of Ed needs to get.
Yeah, and we do that. Well, I do it for the board. Right? Okay, so next slide, please.
Just before we go on, I just wanted to add that when we had our meetings of the whole, we did go over this. You know, we ran through that stuff.
Vance, I think I was at the last one. Is that what you mean, the public one? And I didn't quite get it. It was a different one? Oh, their budget
For our
meeting, a
budget
separate meeting.
meetings.
Yeah, thank you.
Correct. We had 4 of those.
I go to those too to try to really get it, and I'm still
And we usually break it
staring at
down.
those tiny letters on the screen that we get going, what is
That's the
this?
biggest questions we get, like, where's all the Board of Ed money going? This is a lot of money, it's, you know, our budget is really easy to understand, but then people kind of get lost on, well, where'd this money go? And I know there was a question on how much the actual ESSER funds and where all the ESSER funds went, and I don't know that that's been answered yet, so I was just wondering.
That's why we were looking for transparency, because these are public documents, and the town's taxpayers and residents need to know exactly where all the funds are going.
Absolutely.
We get the same question for the town budget. So everybody, COVID, everything. Everybody
Andy,
gives all the
Mike.
dollar value to everybody. Everybody sees
Andy,
it.
Mike.
And everybody sees that. So that's a big question, you know. Like I asked Mary about our increase, you know, as compared to what we received for COVID. And now the Board of Education is 1.37 increase. So people want to know where that money goes. They want to know that they're getting the bang for their buck, basically.
Well, out of 1.37%, 1.15 of it is contractually obligated. So we're talking about a very small increase that we're asking you for
So
today.
basically.
So, I
what
mean,
did
I
you-
know, I don't know if people are upset about that, that very small percentage of the
Well, I think they're-
1.37. I mean, it's a very small amount,
Oh, no,
right?
that's my biggest concern with the inflation and everything. This is a very low number.
We could ask for more, but
And
then,
that's what
I mean,
concerned with.
I'm not sure if that's what you want us to do.
I just don't want us to go over and get in a pickle and not have the money.
Sure, but if you look at past years, we have not gone over, but I think that we should be, personally, I was in favor of a 2.54 or a 3% increase, just to budget in for avoiding what you see happening sometimes where, I know one of the years we looked at 2015, where we all of a sudden had a cost overrun, and we went to a 9% increase. And then it's a real shock to the taxpayers, because we haven't built in and budgeted year over year for, you know, we put all these things off and put them off, and then it hit, and then it catches up with us. Thank you.
I think some of the, just to kind of reiterate on the transparency part, I mean, we don't want to end up like on the news like West Haven, where you know, we're being audited by the feds because people want to know where all these federal funds went. They've lost millions that were misappropriated, and if people don't feel like their money's been spent appropriately and they can't find it, they get upset.
Yeah.
And that's their taxpayers, they're working their tails off to pay their taxes, and they want to know where their money is. I know
Yeah.
I would want to know where my money is going.
So we have provided information. We've reported on the grants during the budget development cycle, but we've also provided additional reports to the board on how we are expending the grants. In case you're not aware, the grant information for all the state and federal grants that every school system in the district receives is publicly available online through the state of Connecticut, right? So the EGMS system, anybody could go on, click on any school system and see all the grants. And actually, you could see the grant applications, and so you could see exactly how each school system in the state of Connecticut said that they would spend those monies, right? But we've had those presentations a few times now with the board. So anyway, next slide would be, this is our sole decision package, Killingly High School girls golf coach, and that's the $4,412, 0.01% increase to the budget. Next slide, please. It's stuck. All right, thank you. It probably went to sleep. So again, just as a reminder, the board approved the budget of $45,644,997. That's an increase of $615,200, or a 1.37% increase. Next page, please. So it's probably not very easy to see on the screen, but you should be able to see it in the handout. So these are the revenue projections for next school year. You can see what we projected for the current school year, and then what we actually are coming in at. So you'll see, like in the middle two columns, we had a BOE 2021-2022 projection as of June 30, 2022. So for school capital contributions, we had a projection there of $253,804. Budget 2 projection, $18,976. So we actually came in over for the current school year by $18,000. We brought in additional money than what we projected. For next school year, we're estimating a decrease in that item of revenue of $21,078. And so you could go down each one, and then you will see that on the bottom line, we came in at $139,813 higher this school year than we projected. For next school year, we anticipate coming in at $119,915 higher than the current year. So we came in higher this school year than we projected in revenues, and next year we project an additional increase in revenues. Right? So these are transportation revenues, tuition revenues. Those are the biggest areas. The school capital contribution, that's a part of tuition for the high school. Are there any questions on the revenues?
And I know I'm jumping the gun here because I, of course, have your handout, so I know what the next few slides hold. But part of your revenues with tuition, that's dependent on students coming. What impact has the pandemic had with those doing homeschooling now, and then continuing on to choose to do homeschooling? What impact has that had, and what impact, obviously, are you anticipating?
So during the early part of the pandemic, we saw a decrease of student enrollment, right? Even when students went out for remote learning, for some families that was difficult, and so parents withdrew their children for homeschooling, which is different than remote. Under remote, we are still providing the educational program, but under homeschooling, the parent or some other person that the parent has arranged for is providing the educational program. With this school year, we saw a bump in enrollment, right? People felt more comfortable having their children return to school, and we have been seeing that over the course of the year. There is a enrollment slide in here with the October 1st numbers that we report to the state of Connecticut, but currently we are over that number. So even as the year has progressed, we've gotten more and more students returning to school, in particular at the youngest grades, right? Pre-K, K1. Okay. All right, on the next slide is all the state and federal grants. It includes the ones that were added due to the pandemic, the ESSER grants, et cetera. You will see some of those grants are extended out into the 22-23 school year, and the ARP ESSER, which is the biggest ESSER, extended out into the 23-24 school year. We don't have a lot of projections right now on most of the grants. There is a bill before our state legislature that were it to be put into law, it would greatly change how education is funded in the state of Connecticut. The bill is actually would be beneficial to the Killingly Public Schools in a couple of different ways. It would fold our Alliance District money into the ECS money, and it would also change how we collect tuitions for our students that come to us through for the ag program at the high school. So the bill would actually create a situation where districts would no longer pay tuition for choice programs. And so those are the magnet schools, charter schools, the agricultural schools in the state of Connecticut. Instead, there would be grant funding provided by the state for the tuition for those kids. And so we don't have projections on a lot of this yet for next year because there is just so much unknown. And also at the federal level, we're not really sure where federal legislation will go to fund various grants that come down to the school systems. At the federal level, we are thinking that we are going to be held flat, or even we might get a bump in some of the grants, but we haven't seen that, all right, because at the federal level, a lot of money has been shifted into the ESSER grants, and so, you know, money isn't, it's not unlimited, and so money sometimes has to come from somewhere else to go into a different funding pipeline. So we're still waiting to hear on a lot of the state and federal funding. But there could be a significant change were the bill to be passed at the state level of how education is funded in the state of Connecticut. And we don't know yet regarding our Alliance District status. I do know that 3 districts have been added to the Alliance District status, but there are some districts that will be graduated, and so we don't know if we're going to be graduated out of Alliance District status, and there is still conversation at the state level about graduating districts and then holding them flat with their Alliance District money for 1 more year, as opposed to just cutting off the funding source. Our district receives about $375,000 in Alliance District money, and should we be one of the districts that graduates, it would be difficult to lose that level of funding without any kind of forewarning to plan for it.
Do you know the name of the bill offhand? That's all right. I just didn't know.
5238, maybe?
Didn't know, yeah.
Maybe it's a ed funding bill. You're welcome. So again, it would be a,
What would happen in order for us to be able to graduate out of being an Alliance district?
so the state would be using student achievement data as well as other data that it collects on all the school systems in Connecticut. And it uses that data to either maintain Alliance district status, graduate districts from Alliance district, or add. And so it's a 5-year cycle. So the pandemic has been a big part of the 5-year cycle, including years where the state did not collect data. And so I'm not really sure what data they're using, pre-pandemic data along with some baseline data that was collected last year. That has not been made clear. We've been asking those questions. Pre-pandemic, the Killingly Public Schools was showing increases in a lot of the student achievement data, had increased graduation rates, had decreased chronic absenteeism, and so the district was making significant headway. I don't know if it is going to meet the criteria for the state to graduate us or not. If we don't get graduated, we will be in another 5-year cycle. Next slide, please.
Mr. Angeli, I just have one question on that slide.
Okay. Can you roll back? Thank you.
Looking at the Alliance General Improvements to Buildings line, it showed $477,000 for the 2020 to 2021 year, and then nothing for the 21-22 year. Can you just explain what that money was for? Was that just a one-time grant for building improvements?
Yeah, so the Alliance General Improvements to Buildings grant is a grant that is occasionally available to Alliance districts. And so that is not an annual type funding. And so when it becomes available, we apply for it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And what was that used for? Just curious.
So I'm not sure of all the projects. I can't hear you. Oh, there you go. That's right. So we upgraded our phone system. That was the primary use of that project. You're welcome. So the next slide is student enrollment for our schools. And you could see that we did have an increase from October 1st, 2020 to October 1st, 2021, right? This was a year we were supposed to return to normal, and we did not, but we did see an increase in students despite the lingering effects of the pandemic, and we anticipate that number going up again next year. We've seen our enrollment climb throughout the year. So like I said, even though the October 1st, 2021 number was an increase over the previous year, even at this point of the year, we are up over the October number. So we've seen increase in enrollment during the course of the year. Next slide. And then just to give you some understanding of the younger grades, right, which become feeders into our upper schools. So the numbers at our 2 elementary schools, KCS and KMS, over the last 3 years. Right? And again, these are based on October numbers. All right, so are there any more questions here? Okay, so at your tables, I did put a document there, the Killingly Public Schools budget surplus history document. This is a document that I put together with our business manager because, even the Board of Education is concerned about whether or not we're budgeting at appropriate levels because at the end of the year, there are unexpended funds that we return to the town. And some people look at those numbers and say, well, the Board of Education and the superintendent are budgeting, are asking for larger allotments of money than we actually need. So going back in time, pre-pandemic, back to 14-15, you could see that pre-pandemic, our budget increases were less than 2%. And then once we hit the pandemic, that is when the budget surpluses have been growing. And that's because during the pandemic, we have not been able to expend funds that we would normally expend under normal circumstances or pre-pandemic circumstances. Right? I would say that there is a sense of normalcy that a Board of Education and even a municipality would end the year with some sort of surplus. The sense of normalcy is also, I think, substantiated or supported by the fact that there is legislation that allows municipalities to create that non-lapsing account. Right, so there is an understanding that there could be savings at the end of the year for a variety of different reasons, and that across the state of Connecticut, districts in municipalities where there has been an establishment of the non-lapsing account are able to put that money aside for future use. Right. Last legislative session or the one before it, that amount was even increased. Right? It was once a 1% of the budget, and more recently was increased to 2%. So as long as a Board of Education has 2 or more percent of a surplus, 2% can be put into the non-lapsing account. Right? And so that is something that occurs on a usual, normal basis. What is unusual, I would say, is the amount of surplus created by the pandemic. Right? And those are big numbers. Right? Over $1 million in 1920, a 2.8%. Last year, 21-22. 2.7, almost $2.8 million. That's a 6.32%, right? That's an unusually high number. And we will have another one again this year. But again, it is due to the impacts of the pandemic. In the previous years, even in 1920, where the pandemic really struck when the governor closed schools in March, right? So that was March, April, May, and June, right? And even in that year, you saw a big uptick in the surplus because everything came to a screeching halt, right? And so money was not being expended in the way that it would normally have been spent in that last part of the school year. Last year, the entire year, right, was grossly impacted by the pandemic, where we were in and out of remote, we were in and out of hybrid learning. We were not sending students on field trips. We were not running athletic programs like we normally do. So we budgeted for a normal year and then didn't get one. We did the same for this year. We budgeted for normal, right? Everybody said it was going to be normal, right? Until it wasn't, right? And then, so we will have another another large surplus again this year. If I knew in advance that next year we would have another large pandemic impact, I would have brought the board a 0% increase, and we'd probably still give back money, right? But I don't know that we're going to have another year like we've had this year. Hopefully, we are increasingly getting back to normal, and which means that we will be able to staff the way we normally do and program the way we normally would. And so that is the expectation. So the 1.37% increase gets us really a status quo type budget, along with one new coaching position at the high school. So that's why I provided that and the explanation. And so the budget book.
Mr. Angeli, if I could real quick.
Yes.
So this slide wasn't something that was available in your presentation for the public to see online.
So I did not put this in there, but I can make the document available on our website.
If you could, that would be great. One thing I did really quick while we were looking over it was I went back to what the final budgets were, looking at the budget history from 2016 through 2022, just so I had a comparison of what the increases were each year compared to the surplus that was turned back. Looking at them over the past 6 years, if you take out the 2 years for the pandemic, there was only 1 year that the surplus turned back actually exceeded the increase at that year, and that was the 18-19, where the budgetary increase for the year was a 1.13%, and there was a turnback of a 1.75%. Kind of why I'm bringing that up is one thing I've heard a lot is the Board of Ed turning back money year after year, and why are they increasing the budget if they're turning money back year after year? I look at it a little bit different in that I would much rather see the Board of Ed not spend all the way up to the last penny that's been budgeted. To me, that shows fiscal responsibility, that you're not overspending. I would rather see a small amount turned back and have a lean budget like you have, rather than, well, let's pad the budget and we'll spend all the money at the end of the year. One thing that I think about when you talk about pre-purchasing supplies, I'm aware there was a town in Connecticut where staff was directed by administration to spend all this money because we've got this money left and we're going to have to turn it back if we don't spend it. They spent it on a ton of paper that was stored in a non-climate controlled area, and the paper went to waste. So I would much rather see where you're being fiscally responsible, where you're not coming for a huge budget increase and then, oh, well, we've got this money left, let's spend it. I understand that you definitely want to have a buffer, because the one thing we don't want to have is have supplemental appropriations. The taxpayers never want to see a supplemental tax bill. B, it's a hit on the town's credit rating, and when we're going out for bonding projects, especially the two big projects we have coming up, that's a huge concern, is I don't want to see our credit rating take a hit on that. And in the past 2 years, they're anomalies. I mean, we look at pandemic, there's no way to predict that. So, I mean, it's looking at this increase, I don't see any huge reason why I would have an issue with what the ask is. I mean, to me, it's the Board of Ed has come forward with a lean budget, and the majority of the increase is contractual obligations with salaries and benefits.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
follow-up to what he was saying,
And use your mic.
as a follow-up what Jason was saying, we have these, years where we're not spending all the money. And I'm looking at the, capital improvement plan. If we could tie that a little bit, if we could, instead of having this big return back to the general fund, maybe we could possibly have some of the capital improvement projects somewhere in a more ready to go stage. So you can't, at the end of the year, you can't just go on June 1st or June 30th and say, oh, we're gonna have, well, take an example, we're looking at last year was 2.7. We have $2.7 million. Do we have a 2.7 million projected project? Well, you wouldn't have anything ready to go. If it's possible that maybe we spend a little bit of money and have some capital projects that might be ready to go, so if we have some of these unexpected funds, that we could get some of those going sooner than later, maybe take advantage of a couple of years. And then we also have the non-lapsing account. It's like trying to use the money that's been appropriated so it looks like I don't wanna spend money foolishly. I don't want that. But it'd be nice if we had something sort of in the planning stages that if we have extra money, maybe we can move on this sooner than later.
So the tactic that the board has been using is to use funding from the non-lapsing account to cherry pick some of those projects out of the capital improvement plan. This year, the Board of Ed approved funding to do repair work on the roof over at KISS, to do repair work at the elevator at KISS, and also the elevator at 79 Westfield Avenue. And so when we do have projects that are either shovel-ready or can be made shovel-ready relatively quickly, then we do go after them. And the board has done that on an annual basis.
But that's what
Yeah.
it's so hard to budget the other way, but I mean, if there was maybe more shovel-ready, to take advantage of this unique it's a unique situation. It's probably not good, but it is good in a way that if we could use it for capital projects. But trouble, it takes a lot more planning also. It's more advanced planning to say, we're getting toward the end of the year, we've got a large surplus. But it has to be ready to go. You have to write the purchase order prior to June 30th. That's the thing. And then, is there enough time to plan and get it to a point where you can write that purchase order? That's a hard place to be, but somehow that could possibly happen.
Some of the projects that make their way into the capital improvement plan also requiring engineering services, right? And so you really can't pull it off in on the turn. But things like repair on the elevator, that's a little bit different. So we do go after those projects that we think we could turn fairly quickly on. Right? This school year, we did a generator at the central office building. We installed a generator.
Quick question, Mr. Ainsley. You mentioned the KCS roof repairs. That roof's not that old, correct? Or is it I think they were just done fairly recently?
So I'm not sure the age of the roof there. My understanding is the roof has been replaced at least once already, and will be coming to the end of its life on the second roof. It's also my understanding that the roof at KCS has been problematic almost since the get-go.
Oh, I thought that was one that they did. They did a couple of the schools. I thought that was they did Goodyear, I believe, and KMS, and they didn't do KCS then?
Not recently.
Okay.
Right. We do occasional repairs over there.
Yep. Just saying yes. I thought there was a problem with the fascia on that when I was.
We did KCS's roof. Did we do all of it? That's the question. Right. I don't remember if we did all of the roof.
Yeah.
I have to.
And it could be that I'm misspeaking. I should be speaking about KIS.
Oh, KIS.
Not
yes, that was-
KCS.
yes, that's
Sorry,
probably-
that was,
Yep. That makes, yeah.
I used the wrong letter in the middle there. It's KIS, right? We did some repair work over there. Well, actually, the board approved the use of the funds, but we've been unable to get a contractor.
Yeah, that roof's
Oh,
been a
that's-
problem.
Okay, that was another,
Yeah.
again, good thing to throw that out. If you can't get it would be nice, we were planning to, you can't get the contractor. Yeah, the effort was made to try to, use these funds.
Yeah.
no, it's-
Yeah. For some projects, we have not even been able to get anybody out to bid or quote on it. The contractors are not available. Okay, so in the budget book,
I got a hand.
oh, I didn't see it.
So, despite the pandemic, it'll be for the past 8 years that the Board of Education has returned money to the general fund. I think the public needs to know that as an alliance district, the Board of Education cannot lower its budget. So despite returning the money to the general fund, I don't think there should be a big surplus, because the following year, you're gonna ask for another increase. And I don't look to it as the Board of Education's money or the town's money, it's the taxpayers' money. So it's the taxpayers who are detrimented by increasing the budgets and then returning it to the general fund and then looking for an increase the following year. So, and if the town or the school system isn't graduated out of the Alliance District, this is gonna hold true every single year, that the budget can never be decreased. So it really isn't a good thing to return money to the general fund. It would be better to have a budget that reflects the actual expenditures of the school district.
So the, I'm sorry, Mr. Vance, did you?
I was just going to say that one of the reasons why the district becomes an alliance district is because of the funding issues. We don't have the fund, if we don't expend the money, then our test scores go down.
So it
And-
hasn't been proven that by spending more money that the test scores are gonna go up. So Hartford Public Schools, they spend a lot of money on their school system and their education, but it really hasn't helped their test scores any.
I think that anybody that has money knows that money always helps. I don't see that as being a relevant argument that, I mean, if we expend the money, then we would have the teaching staff that we need, and then our education test scores would go up. I think what might be missing there is the correlation, right? Take the classic argument, ice cream and the heat temperature, and someone, say murder, for example, right? You could say, well, the sales of ice cream go up in the summertime. So then you would cut, if you cut, then you would say, well, let's eliminate ice cream. And then the murder rate still goes up because you're missing the heat. And the heat is what, the temperature increase is what's causing the.
So the academic
so
achievement
selling more
of
ice
the
cream would
kids is
actually-
based on the budget of the teachers? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that
There's a direct
the state
correlation
has,
between every
with the
child
Alliance
and how
District,
much money the teachers are making? Is that what you're saying?
what I'm saying is that the reason why the state has mandated a minimum requirement for our budget is because we're an alliance district. And the reason why that is, the reason for that is that we didn't expend the money in the first place. That's my belief.
But which money are you referring to? In relation to being an alliance district? Because we're an alliance district because of the academic status of the kids? Like their testing and how well we're doing across the board
Yeah.
academically? So what money are you referring to?
Historically.
Directly.
Historically, the money that we haven't invested into the school system.
$45 million isn't enough?
Well, if you break it down that way, if you're thinking about an average household budget,
Per
$45 million
student
is a lot of
roughly
money, but when you're talking about a
$18,000?
district the size of Killingly, and if you go and compare it to other districts, similar sizes with the budgets, $45 million is not a lot of money.
What is our per student cost? Is it around 17 or 18,000?
It's a little over
A
18,000.
little over $18,000. So we're putting $18,000 roughly into each student, but that's not enough money compared to other districts who are not Alliance districts. But in comparison, because I've looked, and so is Zula, we pay more per student than a lot of districts that are not in our category for academics.
And we
So-
can also
so
look
how
at
would you
St.
explain that?
James. At St. James, their academic achievements, and those teachers are not paid nearly as much as.
So it's difficult to compare one school system to another, and I cannot speak for the Hartford Public Schools, and I cannot speak for St. James. I will say that the budget that the Killingly Board of Education gets to run a school system is mostly salaries and benefits, right? As is any district budget, right? So between salaries and benefits and contracted services and outplacing students, which is paying other people to educate our students, right? We're well over 80%, right? It's people, right? And the school system requires people to teach the children, right? And so that's where most of the money is. I do not know if there is a correlation between teacher salaries and the achievement level of their students, because there are way too many other variables involved, right? But I do know that teacher salaries and para pay and administrator pay, secretary pay, et cetera, is one way that we are able to attract people to work in our school system, and a way to show that we value their commitment to working with the children of the Killingly Public Schools, and to maintain their employment in our district, right? And so, you have to pay people, to work. Our teachers all have, eventually will all have master's degrees. Some of them have advanced degrees beyond their master's degrees. And so these are highly educated people that come to work in the district, right? And they are not compensated similar to their colleagues who are similarly educated in other industries, right? But they have decided to be educators, and they come to work here for us in Killingly Public Schools, right? And we need to honor that commitment.
Mr. Angeli?
Yes.
I would just like to point out, too, that right now, as we were discussing earlier, we have a staff deficit. And, I think part of that deficit is wages and salaries, and the fact that they're lower than other districts in the area. And it's something that we should look at as a district. Thank you.
Well, and I want to say, from going to the meetings, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't that cost you more money than less money to have the deficit? Because that's something I didn't understand, so just for clarification. Because you're
I'm sorry.
hiring your temps all the time, so that actually costs you more
It
money.
will end up costing,
Yeah.
it will end up costing us a little bit more money if we have to bring in temporary.
Yeah, so when we're not fully staffed, we have to fill those vacancies some way, right? And so we generally hire substitutes for our teaching positions that we're unable to fill, but we also have teachers that could be out on leave, et cetera, right? Same thing with paraprofessionals and other groups. So substitutes are used, as a primary way of filling vacancies or leaves of absence when we have them. When we're unable to do that, sometimes we have to contract out to fill the void. When we're unable to do those things, we sometimes ask teachers to take on additional responsibility, either by at the elementary grades, if we have a teacher vacancy we're unable to fill. Sometimes we divide up the students in that class and add those students to other teachers' classrooms. At the high school level or middle school level, we could ask teachers to take on an additional course. So they're teaching, basically beyond contractual expectations. And so we have high school teachers that are teaching all of their courses, but may also have a teacher who is out on leave, or somebody, or there's a vacancy that we haven't been able to fill. The courses that that teacher would have been teaching are divvied up amongst other teachers, and so the teachers are teaching extra courses, right? And so there are costs to those things as well, so those items may go up, right? I said earlier in this meeting that our substitute teacher line is going to be well over expended, right? We'll have to move money from other parts of the budget into the substitute line to account for the amount of subs we've been using this year. But that is offset by salary and benefits of not having permanent people in those positions.
I got one question. The issues with staffing. Now, my understanding, this isn't a Killingly specific issue. This is a statewide issue, regional issue, where trying to find staffing, and not just for academics and teaching, just trying to find staff in general is an issue everywhere.
That is my understanding as well. When I meet with my fellow superintendents, either regionally or across the state, many school systems are experiencing staffing shortages. There's also been a lot of commentary about the during the school year movement. So when a teacher or staff member leaves Killingly to go work somewhere else, that means that they have a vacancy, right? That was created by somebody leaving during the school year, and that person left to go somewhere else, right? And so this has been something that has been occurring statewide, but I also think on a national level, when I read the educational literature on a national level, this is occurring everywhere this year.
Thank you.
Yeah, one more quick question, if you don't mind. How is the state and federal grants is that considered a revenue in your budget, or is that a separate item, or are these all different line items that this kind of gets paid for in your budget, or is this?
So most of our grants are buying staff members that are not in the general fund budget. So, for instance, IDEA grant is a special education grant. We're buying paraprofessionals basically with that grant. Title I grant is educational support. Districts use it a lot for reading and ELA, and we buy reading specialists with that money.
So it's kind of like a bonus?
Well, I don't know if it's a bonus. Right? It's an alternative funding source that comes to the district, and not just our district, but a lot of districts, and it's based upon a formula at the state level. But socioeconomically stressed municipalities get more money than more affluent municipalities.
So it's not part of your budget?
It is not a part of the general fund budget. And so that was one of the questions that came from the town council is not only how are we using the money, but where are the staff, right? And so so one of the things that the town council had asked for is, can we paginate? So we paginated portions of this document, and we're not able to paginate it all. The budget book is made of many, many documents that are all collated and put together, and we do not use just one type of program to do that. And the meeting about making changes to the budget book came a little late in the process, and so we did what we could. So parts of it are paginated, and then we did try to color code some other parts, right? So the green pages in the budget book are the revenue and grants, right? Same from the slide, but we also have some information there about what each of the grants are. And then the yellow pages are the staffing pages, right? And so we broke that out two different ways. So last year we were using the term the operating budget. This year we changed that because it wasn't clear that there was a shared understanding of what operating budget meant, right? And so we changed it to general fund, right? Because I think that is something that people are more familiar with. That is the money that the general fund is paid for by local taxes, right? And so we listed the positions at central office and in each of the schools that is funded by the general fund. And then we have also in yellow the list of positions in the current year that are funded through other funds. And so these would be grant or other monies that come to the district, and we identified which alternative funding source was paying for those positions. All right, and so one of the questions that Mr. Wood sent me via email was there are decimals in there, right? So some of that is because we do have part-time positions, right? We do have part-time para positions. We have a part-time school counseling position at the high school, et cetera. But we could also have a full-time position where the funding source is split, right, between more than one funding source. It could be in the general fund, could be coming out of more than one of the grants. And so that's why you see point this, point that.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I think what threw me off when I was reading it yesterday, and I apparently missed the word. I saw up at the very top, at the very beginning of this full-time count, missed the word equivalent.
Oh, yeah, there you go. FTEs, right, full-time equivalencies.
Mr. Angeli, I just want to say thank you for breaking it down this way. I know that does help clarify some things and some questions that council members and public had over the past couple years.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, I believe about 5 for a family thing. Just one, I'm not.
So I know you've only had the budget book for a few days, but are there questions that you have right now? And we will do our best to answer them during this meeting, but if there are any that we're unable to answer immediately, then we'll take notes and get back to you.
Not so much a question. I know I mentioned in my email to you, there were a few things there that I think would make it easier for the public to read this document there, especially when we get to the very back where we have the proposed budget line by line. The town manager, for us, and again, I know in our fiscal subcommittee meeting, what we were asking, Ms. Clark is only one person and she can't rearrange the world within that small amount of time. So I can greatly appreciate what she does, and again, the Board of Ed and yourself hearing us out and obviously saw some of these changes reflected. But to see previous years reflected, like the last few years, not just the last fiscal year. That would have been one thing. The other part that I found for myself that was a little more frustrating, daunting, is that you do have a great explanation of what each account is, and I believe the way it's broken down is by school. However,
That's correct.
like a heading up top would make it 10 times easier to read to say Killingly High School, Killingly Intermediate School. That I don't know if that's possible with the program you currently have, but
Mr. Wood?
yeah,
It is just in very small letters.
I really got to see.
Like if you go to, you start getting in the white pages.
Yeah.
If you look at like page 1 where it says 100, it'll say district-wide. You go to the next page, page 2, it says 110 KHS.
Yeah, it is there, it's tiny.
Good grief.
It is there.
Problem
Larger
solved.
font for those of us that need glasses, I guess. Well, my apologies. I guess I'll take that one back.
That's correct. I took a note on improved readability. Because the information is there.
I see some of my questions answered too, like on the codes, it says exactly what class and stuff, so thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you very much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Now, is this document available on Killingly Public Schools website for the public to see?
If it isn't there, it will be posted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The one that Tammy mentioned, that one page, can that be up there too?
The surplus history page?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
For you. I don't think it's gonna go much further.
Okay, I've tried to behave myself. But I've got two comments. First, I understand the frustration, not only of the town council, but from the general public about the budget, the Board of Ed budget, and how it is spent. Because you ultimately get a report of how it's spent after the town council and the community have approved it. Once it is approved, people don't know how it gets distributed. And that's very frustrating because they want to be able to trust that their money is being spent on something that they value. So it's a catch-22. The law says this, and people who are paying the bills say, what are you doing with it? And nobody can tell the board where to spend it once it is allocated. And so it sounds very unfair. I mean, just think of giving your teenager an allowance and not being able to ask questions on how it's being spent. So it is frustrating because there's oversight is not part of the law. And maybe collective minds can put something together, not just for the board to report, but for the town council or a community organization or an agency or a commission to comb through it and see how decisions are being made. Because people get elected to these positions, but that doesn't mean they know what they're doing. The second point I'd like to make, or comment, is that every meeting or gathering we hear the same issue about vacancies. We've heard it here as far as vacancies funding other needs or wants. And we have to get ready for becoming more competitive in the job market. Our salaries for staff have to increase if we are going to be pirating as much as people are pirating us. We spend enormous amount of money on training, and then we have to pay retraining again for new recruits. So it's a never-ending cycle. But spending on salaries and benefits does not mean we're going to get academic achievement. The academic achievement may come if we bring down the defensive walls and have an in-depth analysis of what it is that we're offering. We cannot keep packing a suitcase and not be able to zip it up. We keep imposing new programs, new requirements, new issues on a teacher that they don't have the time in the day to implement and get better results from the student body. The institution of education resists evaluation. The institution wants to keep status quo. So what we do with money keeps adding on layer upon layer upon layer of programs and of staff that the institution does not want to purge or clear out. And that's going to be the major, I think, responsibility of the school district. At some point, they have to clean house. They can't keep adding more money for more programs. Something has got to go. And if we offered Latin 5 years ago because we had 15 kids taking it, and we have Latin now with an enrollment of 6 kids, then something's got to go. And we're not preparing the students for adult life or college bound. Because when they go to college, what are they going to do when they find out that the seniors have taken and the juniors have taken up all the classes that they want to take? You have got to be able to offer what you can afford. And that's something that our taxpayers deserve, but our staff deserve it as well, so that they know what to focus on. And you've got to program the schedule of your school according to that idea of what students want to take. Not necessarily schedule a school for what you can offer as a recruitment for out-of-towners. Out-of-towners can come in, we're welcoming them, our arms are welcome. But they're invited to eat at the table we serve.
They're also a source of revenue.
Excuse me. We have to learn.
Usually the way this works is one person talks, and then when they're finished, they don't add their second thing. Then the rest of us get a chance to go.
Mr. Viens, you have had the opportunity to speak during this meeting quite a bit. It is my turn, with the permission of the chair, to express my comments.
Ms. Abrams, if you could continue, please.
Thank you. My comments speak to the reality of arranging an educational offering to students and families that we can afford within an educational framework that we value, with whether that be 2 periods of math a day or 1 every 2 days. But we have to, in my opinion, be serious about evaluating what we offer and putting in place what we feel our families and our students need at this time, not 10 years ago, at this time and for the future, so that we can be viable and so that we can, while we rearrange, so that we can stay within our limitations. We do not have a wealthy tax base. We have to be knowledgeable, considerate, and accountable for what we offer and do the best we can. Nobody can forecast things that happen that are unforeseeable. But we do see this coming because right now we have over 20 vacancies of positions, especially in fields that require focused education. And we can't fill them because we're not competitive. So if we're going to be competitive and stay within our budget limitations, then we have to evaluate what we have now and clean house. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Abrams. Before I turn the mic over to Mr. Bookbinder, I do want to address the first, Mr. Veen, sorry.
Mr. Vince.
Freudian slip.
I do want to address Ms. Abrams' first comment as far as transparency and where the taxpayers' money is getting spent. One thing the town council has been working with town staff on is getting our financial documents available on the town's website. It's something we're working on, something we will be doing. And I think it would be great if the Board of Ed, the Killenly Public School System, could do the same thing. For the taxpayers, it's their money that we're spending, whether it be the council spending it or Board of Ed spending it. And everybody should be able to see where their tax dollars are going. And I think that would alleviate a lot of questions that sometimes we get as council members, and I'm sure you get as Board of Ed members, as far as where is the money that we're giving you going. I am all for transparency, and I think it's only fair that taxpayers see where their dollars go.
Thank you.
Mr. Beans, sorry about
Thank
the...
you, sir. That's all. Thank you. I would just like to say that I think that sometimes it's really hard to unpack everything that Ms. Rivera Abrams just said. And I'm not an orator, but I would like to say that if you take something just like the Latin program, it actually can be a source of revenue for the district, because if we're attracting out-of-district students, that's money that we're making. And if those 6 students are from Brooklyn or Ascending Town, then that's revenue for us, and it's a source of pride for Killingly that we can offer that program. And I think that we need to look at it that way, and if we're threatening to cut it, then 4 or 5 families in Brooklyn might be saying to themselves, we're not going to send our student there to start a program with the expectation of having a Latin program that we know that they're going to eliminate over the next couple of years. So while we look at a very small cost for a Latin teacher, $79,000 in a $45 million budget, is like we're talking about a stick of bubble gum. You understand what I'm saying? It's not going to get us to where Ms. Rivera Abrams wants us to go, and I don't see it as a start. I see it as us actually costing ourselves or losing revenue, because we'll be losing the children from those sending towns, and those students won't be here for revenue for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I'm not sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure that Lydia was talking about specialized staff, that, a Latin teacher, a remedial teacher, Spanish teacher, whatever. I think, from my perspective, we have 78 paraprofessionals. So, and I know people don't like this, and I've been beat up, but I'm going to say it. Paraprofessionals are different tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So we have special education paras that are worth their weight in gold. We have tier 1. How many tier 3s do we have? How many tier 2s? How many tier 1s? How many one-year paras do we have that really, they're very limited in their education? They're just learning, or they're just starting out. How many of those do we have that are taking up salary room, versus the higher level that we need.
Sure,
So that's my question, like,
sure. I think the
as Lydia was
superintendent could
saying,
probably,
we do need to put the money in the right place, but how do we get there? Because I don't think we are right now.
I think Mr. Angeli could probably speak to all this better than I
Oh,
could,
yeah.
but these people that are coming in now that are like your tier ones, those are the people, the experience that they're going to get as a tier one is going to make them that paraprofessional in the future. It's that on-the-job experience, and we need to be willing to invest the money in keeping those people once they get past that area.
I agree with you, but we also need the higher level, and where are we getting our biggest bang for our buck for the
Sure, but it's
academics
a
of
lot
these
less
kids?
expensive for us to create those individuals within the district than it is for us to go out there and try to find them or attract them from other areas.
And what's the turnover on them once they get the training in Killingly, and then do they stay on a regular?
So the turnover on our paraprofessionals is relatively high, and they leave primarily because other districts pay better. The paras that we get as hires, we do attract some veteran paraprofessionals coming in from other districts. But most of our paraprofessionals are relatively new in their career, and so they come in at the lower end of the pay scale.
So is it safe to say that Killingly's kind of being treated like a stepping stone for coming into the industry? And then because we're not paying enough or we're not doing something, they're leaving?
Well, I think that people that come here for either paraprofessional, teaching, administrative, et cetera, do so because they want to work in Killingly. And once they are established in their career, they may find that there are other career opportunities, and some leave occasionally.
But you admit there's a higher turnover than.
In the paras in particular, because the pay scale is not all that good. The board did recently negotiate a contract with the paras and have made improvements. There was an adjustment. The paras were happy with the effort that the board put in to make adjustments to the pay scale, right? But still, comparatively to other districts, even with the adjustment, our pay scale is a little low. I will make just one comment on one of the things Ms. Rivera-Abrams said. I think the analogy to giving a child a set of money and then feeling like you can't ask the child how they're spending the money, that's not really the same thing that we have with the public being taxed to pay for a school system or municipal costs in general. There is accountability built into the law. There is oversight, which is why we have a monthly budget report made to the Board of Education. There are also quarterly reports provided as well. And so there is oversight. It's an interesting step that the town is taking to put the general ledger up on the website. And if that is something that the Board of Ed would like us to do, then we would do the same thing.
Thank you. Any more questions, comments from council?
I would just like to
Mr. Meeks.
echo what Mr. Angeli said about our system. And I think, it's a 300-year democratic tradition of local control. And I do take some offense to the idea of it being equated to giving the money to your teenager. I think that I think this is a historical tradition that we have, and as I think Benjamin Franklin said it, that it's the worst system until you look at all the others. It's the best system that we have. Local control, elected people overseeing this stuff. Thank you.
I have a question. So I really do appreciate this, because I try to stumble through all of our things, my town things as well, so that when the citizens ask me questions, I have a real answer. Sometimes I will go to the board and say, what about this, and all the questions, they don't have an answer. You know, and maybe things get lost in translation over a few weeks of getting, do I go to all of these board members, like protocol, this is a protocol question, like where there's no training, like you said, only for the board about how to understand these particular things. What is my protocol if I go to the board and no one in the board seems to be able to, you know what I mean? I want to be able to answer every question that comes my way.
Well, I can't speak for Ms. Jolly, and I'm sure she will interject if I go astray here. But it's been my experience that elected officials speak to other elected officials, right? So your counterparts on the board, generally the communication comes into the board chair. And then if there is a request for the school district, then Ms. Jolly would let me know that this request has come through, and then I would make arrangements.
Like for training sessions?
Yeah,
We'll see how, I'll look at this book.
okay. Right, is that fair and appropriate? Okay.
And Mr. Vance, and to Ms. Abrams' account, basically, it's transparency. So if there was transparency, there wouldn't be a question, right? So if you, like the town council, putting our ledger on the town website is transparency. So if you did the same, there would be multiple less questions about what's going on, right, Ms. Abrams? Is that kind of correct?
There might be different questions.
I'm sure there'll be different, hey, well, you know what? It's
There
the
will always
it's
be
the-
questions.
It's the taxpayers' money, so they want to know what's going on, like they're teenagers.
It depends on how it is read, like you have all said. You missed one word. That changes the whole sentence. If you know what you're reading, you know where to look. Putting this on the web, just as is, it doesn't really help the person who, I mean, it takes a board member a year just to know what the 100 and the 200.
Well, there's a
I mean,
there's a
the
key. The
the
key is in the book. You
But
can look at the key.
First of all, you have to,
Sort
you're
it out.
assuming that you're assuming that everyone in town has a computer and knows how to use it and knows how to understand this. So just putting it out there does not ensure transparency. What is it, a month now? Mr. Farron has been asking for some kind of an explanation of the checks that are written out for 40,000 and 50,000 and 60,000. I know I've been there for, 3 occasions when Mr. Farron has very kindly and nicely in his very low-toned voice has asked, still nothing. It depends on how you define and use official documents. And we know well in advance that every industry has its own acronyms. How many people have come up to us and say, what's SEL? We sit at a meeting and ask each other. I know, because that's the private code that people use when they don't want to be transparent, but yet are trying to make believe that they are.
Right, exactly, 100%. If the public had confidence, they wouldn't be asking the question.
We can't assume. It's like when we went to hybrid and remote, the parents had to pick up the slack. And we are assuming that just because we give them a tablet, they know how to use it and help their child learn, when you've already changed curriculums twice and they don't know which math curriculum you're using, and it's not the math that I've learned. So all of these things have a meaning for the user. When you have a page that you can't see, but you're being told that it's what it says, but you can't see it. It's in different shades of light green and light blue in a very, very small font. Are you really, is the intention really there to be transparent, or are you just checking off a box? You have to think of the ones who have less, not the ones who have more. The ones who have more will have 3 computers at home, and they know how to mix and match and do Skype and all of those things. The ones who don't are being passed over. And those are the ones who quietly at the supermarket tell you, what the hell are they doing? Those are the ones that are more.
100%.
Mr. Beans?
I think it's a false statement to say that we use that we use abbreviations to try to limit the language or to try to keep people in the dark about what's going on. I think it's just for time. You know, social emotional learning is a lot to say within a lecture 5, 6, 7, 8 times. So you shorten it to SEL. And then, naturally when I first got on the board, I usually would write down acronyms and then look them up. Not necessarily always during the meeting, but look them up. And then if you, just like anything, just like studying vocabulary in school, after a while you develop the vocabulary too. Or if you really need to know to ask a question, I could always say to Mr. Angeli, what is SEL? And and then he would be more than glad to tell me. I think it's really just like anything with these meetings, when we have them, they go 3-4 hours. It's really not any kind of grand conspiracy to try to keep people in the dark. It's just simple, just a way to save time, and that's all that it is. Thank you.
Ms. Lannon?
Thank you. I just want to thank you all for listening to our budget and for your questions. As you know, I'm new here, so I'm learning as I go along. But 3 words that keep coming up to me are money, which is the budget, why we're here, right? Transparency and scores, which I've noted as academic achievement. I think that those things all, am I too close, too far? You probably can't hear me anyway because I'm quiet. Oh, that one's on. Those 3 words, money, transparency, and academic achievement, all go together, and they all go to our reputation here at Killingly. Students can choose to come here, they can choose the academy, they can choose Pomfret, but also our families can choose, if they have the means, to choose other high schools or other options. The true transparency for me, and I've emailed Mr. Angeli about this, is what we need to fill our staffing vacancies, which is directly related to our budget and why we're a part of the reason why we're here. If we can't fill those staffing, if our schools aren't 100% staffed with certified teachers, and they are not, our academic scores aren't going to increase. Our Alliance rating isn't going to graduate if it doesn't. And we do need to evaluate what we offer, but more so my opinion as a parent, as a taxpayer, as a representation of the school district is that it's more important that we focus on how we're offering it. As a personal example, my daughter's I have 2 children, one of them is at KIS. She has had a class that has not had certified instruction all year long, and her sub has a sub, and sometimes that sub has a sub. Those are the transparent conversations that we need, and they're directly related to our academic achievement, to transparency, and back to our budget. If we can't fill these positions, we're truly doing our students and our taxpayers a disservice, because I want people to want to come here, and I think that what we need to do is attract families to our school district. I thank you again for listening to us. I thank you for your dedication. I know it's heavy sometimes, and it's hard. So as a parent, I see you, I hear you, I appreciate your work, and I think these conversations need to be more open and honest. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitehead.
So I think in response to you, ma'am, is, I couldn't hear your name, sorry.
Lennon.
Lennon. I think it all is one piece, but without, if you take a parent, I mean, most parents are gonna say, listen, I don't care what it costs to take care of my kid, but I wanna know where that money's going. So with if you don't have the transparency, Mr. Vance, how much is enough money to increase the score, in the kid's score? How much is enough, is what I would ask you. And then, with that money, what are you doing with that money? Is I would wanna know as a parent.
Well, I'd let Mrs. Landon answer first, but I can hold on to that.
You can answer. I don't know the answer. I don't know how much money is the answer.
I think that just
wasn't the amount.
in taking like
It
a
was
real
just
world,
transparency.
because I know you like the contractor thing. If you're doing a roof and you can't get, say you need 10 people to complete the roof, and you can only find 5, then the first thing you're gonna think about is, maybe I can attract more people if I increase what I'm paying an hour. And it just seems like an easy, logical step to me, that if we have these vacancies, and I know I've talked to people in district, paras that have left the district that are from Killingly, who went because they were having trouble making ends meet, paying the rent, paying the car bills, paying for the car payments. And I think that we need to get down to that basic level where if especially for our 10-year teachers, if we improve that step, if we pay more for that step, I'm not saying that it has to be a lot of money. It's a very small amount. It might even only be a cup of coffee a week, what you would spend for a Dunkin' Donuts coffee a week, increasing your taxes. And we bring that second step up. We bring that 10-year step up. We retain those 10-year teachers, and then we have those people in district to help train new teachers that are coming in. It just, like I said, it's a very small amount of money. It's not a lot of money. It's not going to break the local taxpayer. And it's also going to increase property values over time. And that is going to bring up the general fund. It's going to raise our valuation, and it's going to make Killingly a place that people want to move to. Thank you.
I agree with your concept, 100%, but you're missing I don't say you're missing the fact, but if I'm gonna pay a contractor for X amount of, no, let me finish. Sure. If I'm gonna pay a contractor X amount of dollars to do something, whether it's labor, whether it's material escalation, whatever, it doesn't matter, I know where that money's going. I think the problem is if the parent is gonna pay that extra amount of money, they wanna know where the money's going. And if it's too much to break it down to where they're happy with it, then, I'm sorry, as a parent, I want to know where my money's going, basically.
Well, I just would say,
Bang for your buck, value engineering.
you could, it's always trust but verify, right? We're always going to be constantly in this situation. It's trust, it's a trust between us and the town council.
Right.
It's a faith agreement. We have trust in each other, and then we have checks and balances. So you verify what we have up there, and I think these budgets are transparent. I find it hard to reconcile the idea that they're not. But just based on being able to read it, I think it's plain English, and it's right there.
But there was questions, I'm sorry, but there was questions asking about what checks were written, what's that, you know what I mean? Why is that not answered? So that, it may be a completely logical reason why I had to write a check, 100%. But if you don't get that information to people, then that's a problem, because then you lose that sense of trust. You know what I mean?
Well, it's my understanding in our system that the vice chair of the Board of Education has always had the opportunity to sign off on the checks, and has always done so, and that's pretty much the way that our operation runs. So I really can't, I don't know, I can't speak to to the check issue. I'm not sure what's going on. I haven't seen the checks. So I don't know if Ms. Jolly could
May I
speak to that.
address that? We
please.
spend $1.5 million a month, every month, in checks. And what we're asking is, who are these people? What's their position? Why are they getting hundreds and hundreds of dollars, or sometimes thousands of dollars? We just want to know about where the money's going. Who are these people? Or what are these companies? Just a little bit of clarification, just a little bit of transparency. And the vice chair is actually a secretary, and so I was the vice chair in the past, and what they do is they create a rubber stamp with your name on it, and so you're not rubber stamping, the secretary or somebody in the business office is rubber stamping these checks. We just want to know who's getting that money. It's $1.5 million a month. It's a lot of money going out the door, and we don't know who any of these people are.
And it's probably a justifiable amount, but it's just the point of being clouded, putting a cloak over somebody and not giving them the information. That's the thing. It would be solved
We
with an
don't
explanation.
understand why we've asked month after month after month after month and not gotten an answer. I don't get it.
So I could provide some information there. There was a time earlier in the school year when Mr. Farron asked for the check approval to be pulled, and he had specific questions about 5 or 6 of the checks. More recently, Ms. Jolly, Mr. Farron, well, shortly after that, Ms. Jolly, Mr. Farron asked that we generate a different check report that had additional information on it. That request resulted in an 83-page document for that particular month. And we showed that document to Mr. Farron and Ms. Jolly, and it wasn't quite what they were expecting. And so we don't have a report specific to the request. More recently, I think it was the January checklist that we pulled again, but there weren't any specific questions asked about any of those checks. And I believe Ms. Jolly had a conversation with the board's attorney about that document. And in the end, it came back to the board and was approved. We are still working on another way to organize that report so the information that the board has been requesting will be included in the report without generating a report that is, very long. But in the meantime, we pulled another check report. Mr. Farron had questions about right around about 10 of those checks. We'll get that information to the board. Right, but the checks that are for people like so that checklist is a public document. It's included in the board packet, so anybody could take a look at it. The companies that are listed there are companies that the district does business with. At one point, a question was raised about, who is CBS? Do we know who that is? So it doesn't say in a report who CBS is, but CBS is our copiers. That's the company we have contract with for the copiers. When there are individual people's names listed there, they are either staff members who are getting reimbursed for making purchases, or they are officials that have worked various athletic events, or they could be I don't know, those two would be the primary reasons why we write a check. It could be somebody who is a vendor, an independent vendor who has come in to do work in the district, right? And so the check is made out to a person's name. So while I appreciate your comment that they are probably good expenses, they are good expenses, right? But the district does work with lots of different vendors and reimburses staff members and pays officials. And that information isn't provided in that report. We could produce the 80-something, well, for that month it was 80-something pages long, but some months might be shorter and some months might be longer. But it's a $45 million budget, right? And so I think it stands to reason that we would be cutting checks of a significant or substantial amount of money each month, right? Because it's a big budget.
I understand that.
Yeah.
It's just the point is transparency, you know what I mean? So it costs you an 80-page report, but if somebody asked for it, then obviously you guys gave it to them. But it's just a transparency thing. If it was, I'm sure it wouldn't have escalated to this anger if it was just, okay, Andy wrote a check for whatever, okay, so it's a town thing, here's the reason why we sent it. So I don't think it would have escalated that far if it was just, okay, what's the information, what's the checks, what are we doing? And I understand you can't dissect and write every single little check, I understand that, but if you had a generalization of where this money's going, then it's less questions, because these people, everybody's, their constituents are constantly knocking on their door, calling them and asking them where the money's going. So it's kind of frustrating on your end and on our end as well, because we really want to be able to give that information out. If somebody asks a question, hey, what are we doing with this? What are we doing with this? You know, your SEL, how many people, I'd love to hear an explanation of that, you know what I mean? A complete definition. But it's just, these are questions that come up every single day. All we have to do is give information to the people. That's it. That is problem solved.
So come to the second meeting in April. There will be another presentation on SEL. So we've had several as part of principal reports, and there will be another one as a part of the Director of Pupil Personnel Services at the second meeting in April.
It's the best soap opera in town. I don't know why nobody's watching. Wednesday nights. Tune in.
I'm watching.
There you go.
I just want to address a couple comments that were made between Mr. Veens and Ms. Lannon. As far as improving the education to attract more people into town, the biggest thing we got to remember is it's a balance. Anytime we increase taxes, it isn't affecting just the parents. It's affecting our local businesses. It's affecting our local economy. If we start increasing the budget extremely, we could lose businesses in town. Then we're looking at, do people want to move into town because all of a sudden now we have these closed businesses, we don't have the jobs available. So it's a fine line we have to walk between economic growth, improving our education system, and balancing the burden on our taxpayers, because the majority of our taxpayers are not parents. The majority of our taxes come from our businesses. And we have to keep that in mind, because without the businesses in town, our mill rate would be through the roof to pay for our education system. And that's something we always have to be cognizant of and keep in mind.
And our elderly population, many of which can't afford any tax increases.
Ms. Murphy?
And I'll just, once again say thank you for doing this. And you should never take this personal, like last Sunday or the Sunday before we had goal setting and I was like, communication. because people ask us things all the time.
Get beat up.
So don't take it personally. Thank you.
Any more comments, questions?
So I wanted to thank Mrs. Lannon for your comment when you were talking about the staff certified. And this isn't to knock any of the paraprofessionals that work in the district, and I understand what you're saying about they're coming in and they're learning and they want to stay. But the analogy you used is really important to maybe point out that quality over quantity or experienced over non-experienced. So my husband does roofing. He's done some pretty big jobs. And when he was just starting out, he was a laborer. Clean up, laborer, you learn the skills. So if there's no general contractor on the entire job, then you have foremans to tell the laborers what to do, and then you got the, like my son, cleaning up the shingles at the end. If there's two guys cleaning up shingles, and there's a foreman, but there's no general contractor to tell everybody what they're doing and where they're supposed to go and what their daily, like the certified teacher, what do you have? You need that quality, certified, experienced staff to assist the other workers, the other educators. So it's not saying we don't need the tier 1 paras, but this is just my estimation, and I have a child with special needs, so I actually do know what I'm talking about. If you have the more trained, experienced paraprofessionals or the remedial teachers or the reading language, specialists, they are able to assist the lower rung, the newer, inexperienced staff to do better. And we might not need 78 if we have those certified, specialized teachers that we're desperate for. So it's a matter of looking where to put your money to get the best academic outcome for the kids. I think it's important for every child to get what they need. I understand this. But we also have to have targeted staff to be able to help every child there. And that's pretty much, quality over quantity is what it comes down to.
And monetary gains is not totally a motivator. If people are happy where they're working, they're going to stay there.
Mr. Means?
I think you're making my argument for me. I mean, I think if these salaries go up, we will be able to get those specialized people into the positions. And I would say that we're not talking about someone, making a lot of money here. What we're talking about is the issue of people leaving the position is that they're having trouble making monthly bills. And so that basically, if you look throughout the history of the United States, from 1972 till now, wages have not been keeping up with inflation, and that's a problem for households. And so I think we need to be mindful that at some point we have to increase these teachers' salaries. Thank you.
I just want to clarify that I guess from my own peace of mind, I think that all of the open positions, all of the people who are in our schools are dedicated, responsible adults, and they're all worthy, whether they're certified or not certified. I appreciate them wholeheartedly. My concern is that we have vacancies opening faster than we are filling them. And that's where we need transparent discussions on how we're going to attract people, if it's money, benefits, happiness, working where your kids are in school, whatever people need. I think that we owe it to our students and our community to have a school that is fully staffed appropriately and not piggybacking on other staff members who are in the building covering for other positions. I've been in KCS, 15, 20 times in March alone, and our staff are phenomenal. They're doing things that are expected of them and more, and I would just like to see a budget that reflects a fully staffed school so that our kids are getting what they need when they need it. And back to the certified, not certified, and focusing on not what we offer, but how we offer it, making sure that the kids are getting what they need by who needs to give it to them. Thank you.
I just have one question in response to her comment, and this is from Mr. Angeli. The budget you presented, does that budget take into account any staffing cuts, or is that keeping staffing levels current where they are?
Staffing levels are current to the current year, except for the additional coaching position for the girls' golf team.
Okay, so this budget doesn't
We're
have
not,
any staffing
there were
cuts
some
included
decision
in it?
packages to add staff.
Okay.
They did not make it into the Board of Education's budget. Some of those, we could be looking at changing our grant applications to some of the grants to include some of those positions. But, you know, as we discussed here last year, anything that we put into those grants that we feel we will need when the grants expire, those then become decision packages again to move them into the general fund budget. Otherwise, we lose them.
But the way the budget is right now, this budget wouldn't, if this budget was passed the way it is, the Board of Ed and the public school system wouldn't be planning on cutting any staffing positions.
We're not
correct?
cutting any,
Okay.
and we're only adding that one coaching stipend.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the guiding light. And goal number 1 is academic knowledge. When you're talking about construction, the person doesn't only want to know where their money is going, but what is the final product? How does it look when you're done? The whole effort has to come out to reflect that.
Value engineering.
Not just how it was, but give me the final product, which is what I'm paying for. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Beans? Oh, you just shut the mic off? Okay. So you're reaching for it. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I want to thank the superintendent and the Board of Ed members for presenting this budget. And we will move on in the agenda, which the next item up. No. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Motions have been made by Mr. Cotula, seconded by Mr. Grandelski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.